All right, everyone. Good evening. And Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov for the big miracles, Mazel Tov for the times we're living in. Happiest, most joyous, most incredible times. I don't even know what to do. It is absolutely stunning. We are living the ultimate prophecies. We're living through and we are heading to, all I can describe it is in two words, Od Yoter Tov. It's going to be so much better. And it is absolutely stunningly awesome. So the other day I just saw a video from Reb Shmuel Eliyahu, the rabbi from Tzfat, the son of Reb Mordechai Eliyahu, who is the chief rabbi of Israel, and he's, I think, the chief rabbi of Tzfat and that area. Any case, Reb Shmuel Eliyahu made a bracha yesterday on YouTube, the bracha of Tohu Meitiv. I should probably do the same. I was asking, that rabbi didn't answer me, but I think we should really all do it. Maybe tomorrow. We should all actually make the blessing. Because when something good happens, you say Shechiyanu. That's if it happens to you personally. But something that happens that's not just for you, but good for a lot of people, you say the blessing of Atov Umetiv, that God is good and he does good for others. I don't know how many Jews are in Israel, but if 3 million Jews were just saved from the threat of annihilation, I think it pretty much deserves singing and dancing and blessings and the reciting of the whole Hallel. We don't have the power to enact that, but I think it should almost be spontaneously. We have to. It's not just we have to. This is what it calls for. It calls for joy and jubilation and singing like a Purim. This is literally a Purim. And this is going to lead into even a greater Purim. It's really interesting that, we saw what Israel did, the courage that it took, the emunah, the faith that it took. We discussed it in the earlier classes. Everybody was like just doing what they needed to do. Netanyahu was doing what he needed to do. The Israeli army needed to do what it needed to do. Donald Trump, president of the United States, did what he needed to do. Even the Iranians are doing what they need to do. It's like everybody's doing what they need to do. They need to come down with their tails wagging between their legs, and that's what it seems like they're doing as well. Everybody's coming together, so it's interesting. The strike that we had when America joined and just filled in the piece that was necessary for the United States to do, which we'll talk about later, why this piece, particularly the United States, Israel couldn't do it. I mean, other than the physical reason, there's a spiritual reason as well. But the America had to come in and join and do that one job. So, of course, there were the various different military leaders. There's, of course, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and then there's also the Joint Chiefs of Staff Commander or General, whatever he is. His name is Dan something Kane. So these were the two, I guess, or at least of the most important leaders of this campaign. Now, if this campaign knocked out Iran's nuclear capabilities, which saved the Jewish people, in a spectacular pre-Messianic, or I wouldn't say even pre-Messianic, what should we call it? Opening round of Moshiach's arrival and revelation, I'm sure every little detail in these events are accurate and perfect. So the players and their names mean something. Hegseth, I don't have Kabbalistic Torah on Hegseth yet. That's going to take a little, I would say, some kind of a brilliance to figure that one out. Hegseth is not such an easy word to work with. But I got the one who gave the briefing in the morning, whose name is Dan Kane. And I know this is on the funny side, but this is what I thought. Every Saturday night, and the miracle we found this time, happened Saturday night. It happened at the conclusion of the Shabbat. In Israel, it was already Motzei Shabbat. It was Sunday. It was the eve to Sunday in Israel and in Iran. To us, it was in the latter part of the Shabbos. Right? We also was here in Los Angeles. It was Shabbos afternoon when the strike happened. In New York, it was in the East Coast, which is very important because that's where the main player of all of this is. Okay, that's where Moshiach is. So that's why it's important that it happened mincha time over there, okay? And then in Israel, but then when we found out about it, we were all going out of Shabbos. So what was the first thing you do when you go out of Shabbos? You make Havdalah. We do our Havdalah ceremony. And when we do our Havdalah ceremony, what do we always say? We say an introduction to the Havdalah, the verses that we say, Hine Kel Yeshua, see, God, you are my salvation. Evtach, I trust in you. V'lo evchad, and I don't tremble. I don't panic. I'm not afraid. And then we say the great verse, La Yehudim, to the Jewish people, Haisa oira v'simcha v'sasa in v'ikar. To the Jewish people was light, oira, v'simcha, and joy, v'sason, and gladness, v'ikar, and glory. So the time of the and where does that verse come from? When was it that we're emphasizing that for the Jewish people there was glory? Well, it has to be in a time when the Jewish glory and the Jewish pride and the Jewish respect was not doing too well. We were downtrodden. Well, it was during the time of exile, during the time of the Persian exile. It was in the worst moment of the Persian exile. It was at the moment when they were ready to annihilate every Jew. Right? Back then. Right? It was at that moment. And then we emphasize, wow, suddenly a turn of events like this in a moment. Like Hudim, to the Jewish people, I saw oira, there was light and joy and happiness. But I think very important, v'yakar, and glory. Because it says later in the Megillah that the nations in the world were Manasseh Mesa Yehudim, were elevating the Jewish people. Fine. So this verse, which is talking about what happened in ancient Persia, before by the miracle of Purim, that the Jewish people went from the bottom, and they rose up to the top. And by the way, this was at the end of the exile, as a preparation for the beginning of the redemption. It was an incomplete redemption then, because then the Jewish people went out from Persia and went up to build the temple. So stunningly, we've been wishing for ourselves in our Havdalah prayer for thousands of years. I don't know already how long Jews are using exactly this liturgy, this nusach. But for a very long time, we state this verse, and then we say, just like the miracles that happened then, that was La Yehuda Ma'isa Oira V'Simcha V'Sasin V'Ikar, Kain Tialanu, so it should be to us. So it hit me, I said, oh, isn't that really cool? This guy who led the entire operation, his name is Cain. Dan Cain. Cain, Tialanu, Cain will bring this upon us. I know it's on the like you say, b'derech tzachos. B'derech tzachos means in a humorous way, but I don't think necessarily only in a humorous way. I think it's, and maybe he's related some spiritual connection to Cain, who killed his brother and had to atone for the mass death that he caused by killing his brother, the original Cain. I'm not going to get into guessing people's origins in incarnations or sparks or whatever. What I'm saying is that this Cain, General Cain, oversaw a major event in world history, whether he knew it or not. I mean, he knew it was an important event, but how cosmic it is, I don't think he has realized it yet. He will realize how beautiful. He was an instrument of God, but his name is Cain. And we say it beautifully. Cain, that the miracles that happened then, that the wicked ones in Persia were defeated, who wanted to annihilate the Jewish people. As someone pointed out to me, that Khomeini, whether the first Khomeini, the second Khomeini, whatever their names are slightly different, I'm not an expert on it. But both their names, the first one and the second one, is really Khomeini. It's Haman. That's what it is. Hamanites. These are Hamans. These are modern day Hamans, because their intention is the same intention as Haman. To annihilate and to destroy and to kill every single Jew, starting with the Jews in Israel. And they were building and they were racing towards a weapon to make that happen. And here we had Cain, who Tialanu brought us the same miracle that happened back then. That what? And that brought us the biggest holiday of singing and dancing and intoxication even. And the great. We need to do it now as great as then. Even if it takes another moment before Moshiach reveals himself, we should make this into a great, great holiday. And as I said, Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu made the blessing with God's name. And then I heard that he said we shouldn't say Tachnun. At least on Sunday, I told the shul, no Tachnun, no Tachnun, even though it wasn't my shul. I just got up in another shul. I said, guys, no Tachnun today. I take it on my shoulders. Such a miracle that happened to the Jewish people. It can't be, we have to celebrate. In any case, it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. What I would like to do is, today is I would like to, bring out some very interesting pointers of like things that you might have missed. Because everybody is, where the stuff are passing around. There's such stunning Torah sources that are all prophecies and like what we call divine providences and everything coming together in such a perfect way that we can feel God's love. Oh, can we feel God's love? We can feel God's love so much that even the President of the United States, when he spoke right after the strike, I don't know about you, but I got a kick out of it. Just watching President Donald Trump walk down, comes down that long hallway, flanked by these three big muscle guys, Vance, and these are no little peeps. Thank God it's not like what we could have had in the White House, right? We could have had what would have been decided just a few months ago. Even the most staunchest Democrats, those that can bring themselves to compliment the president on doing something, are saying that, I don't think the other possibility would have done this. So you see how God has made stunning preparations. But it was just so beautiful to see those four guys there. And when you see them step up there, you realize that the world recognizes don't mess. But that too, God prepared. God made that be that way. Esav, in the end of days, has to come and protect his brother Jacob and join with him. It's very important. We've discussed all of that over the last couple of years. We've been talking about this since 2016. This joint fusion between these two powerful forces as a greeting of Moshiach. But one of the things that Trump said was, "Oh God, we love you, God." That was an interesting thing to say. He didn't just say, "God bless America." He said, "God, we love you, God." You know why I think he said that? I don't think that was premeditated. I don't think that was even like he prepared that speech like to say, "Oh, I'm going to say that." That was a spontaneous. Why? Because God is showing such love to the world. God's love to the world is so palpable. You have to understand something. It's not just for the Jewish people. You have to realize this is for the entire world. And when I say for the entire world, I mean even for the Arabs and even for the Iranians. There is such love from God. Do you realize how few Iranians were killed in these strikes? You got the entire toppling of the Iranian nuclear and all their nuclear ambitions. We'll see if their government will survive or not. They can't rebuild. I mean, especially since Moshiach is coming, there's no rebuilding for them. They're done. It's kaput. It's over. If they're technically going to stay in power or not is yet to be seen. Today's days, I feel like I can't give any classes because whenever I give a class, I'm thinking, hey, 5 minutes after the class, there might be a stunning new development, and the class suddenly becomes almost it's not irrelevant, but so much like there's a new twist. Now we're seeing so many Hashem is throwing so many curveballs. It's becoming so like it's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But what I'm saying is the fact that the Iranians themselves didn't die. I mean, there must have been some that were killed, but in terms of the mass people in Iran, these were such precision strikes. And it was done in a way that it should not harm even them. And that's what's so beautiful over here. To take down the worst of the worst without having. See, it used to be when Hitler, when Germany was perpetrated their crime. Now, listen, I can't speak. I don't know for every human. Only God knows. Only God knows. Only God knows the heart of every human being. So only God knows what went into the heart. Most of the Germans were complicit in this. They were part of it. They encouraged it. But one thing is, when Germany was defeated, it came about through what? Through the death of millions of Germans by the Allies. They bombed the daylights out of them. They literally carpet bombed, the devastation that was caused in Germany, and the same as in Japan. To stop the war, what was necessary was the death and the carnage and the suffering of millions of people, because that's before the times of Moshiach. Now the evil are destroyed in such a perfect, laser guided surgery. Just the bad guys taken out. It's so beautiful. And that we might be right now. We might be out of the woods. We might be already at the time of peace based on what is being said tonight. I don't know if Israel and Iran have completely agreed to the ceasefire, but Trump is arguing not only is this a ceasefire, but this is going to be an eternal, forever. And I'm believing, and it's becoming more and more and more clear to me, that he's not even saying his own thoughts. He's just being spoken through. Because we are really at the time of no more wars. What we just watched could have been the last war. For those who want to see Mashiach coming, those who are seeking to see Mashiach coming, with blood splattered all over the seven skies, and the seven seas colored red from the death of millions of people, of Gog and Magog, and all these wars, which, yes, could be based on biblical prophecies, yes, but we have to understand that all of these things, they don't have to occur in their fullest, goriest fulfillments. The great tzaddikim, the great righteous tzaddikim, especially the Hasidic masters. I'm saying something very, very important now, probably the most important thing I'm going to say tonight. The great Hasidic master said there's going to be much less of Gog and Magog. I don't know why there are some people who they send me messages how, there's going to be such death and carnage. What are you, out of your mind? Where's your compassion for people? Where's this, it's so insane. Where's this enjoyment when people are dying? The bad guy, everybody. Why? Isn't it better that everybody does tshuva? And everybody repents, and everybody, and all of humanity rises to the great. Okay, we're seeing a lot of evil, bad people, and they're going to be very ashamed. But who needs all this death? So the great tzaddikim said that. But I'm going to take it a step deeper. It's because of the Baal Shem Tov, and because of these great tzaddikim, who brought so much satisfaction to God through serving God with joy, and teaching the Jewish people to love each other and to serve God with joy, that sweetened all the judgments that were piled up in heaven that would call for all this horrific end game. Anybody that knows anything about mysticism and Kabbalah knows that all the suffering comes from these judgments, from the dinim, a lot of dinim and a lot of judgments. All this can be sweetened. And here is the most important one. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he rolled out his mivtzayim, his mitzvah campaigns, when the Rebbe rolled out his mitzvah campaigns, the Rebbe sweetened judgments like no one has ever since the world was created. Because the pleasure that God gets from Jews meeting Jews on the streets and popping tefillin on each other's heads in the middle of the most unexpected places makes God laugh like you can't even imagine. It gives him such a kick. It gives him such a thrill. It removes every bit of of disappointment that he has. We have no idea what blessing the Lubavitcher Rebbe brought to the world. Through the myth, precisely because he reached out to all Jews that are so seemingly, there's no such a thing as a Jew disconnected, seemingly disconnected. And gets them to do a mitzvah in the most unexpected moments and in the most unexpected places. That sweetened all the judgments. And that can make Mashiach come without the millions and millions of deaths predicted. And you're watching it. I wasn't going to mention this at the beginning of the class. I was going to go to this at the end of the class. But since I'm there, what I just said, here it is in the Rebbe's words. Stunning. That's why the Rebbe is Moshiach to the exclusion of everyone else. Mark my words. I know some of you YouTubers get very upset when I say that. You're never watching the channel again. Do whatever you feel you want to do. I'm telling you, to the exclusion of everyone else. Because if you want a Mashiach with a lot of blood, go find yourself another Mashiach. But if you want the Mashiach that God wants, the Mashiach that's going to bring the Geulah b'chesed u'berachamim, with kindness and compassion, with love, with joy, with happiness, in a way that is going to, where the world is full of laughter and light, where the world is rectified, not destroyed. That's the Rebbe. And here you go. And I'm reading to you these words. And anybody that's an angry person who has a lot of rage and takes his anger out religiously, I'm sorry, go see a therapist. Okay? Listen to these words. Listen to the Rebbe's words. The Rebbe's talking about the Persian Gulf War, which ended very quickly. The first one. Then there was phase 2 with Bush number 2 after 9/11. But the first Persian Gulf War in 1991, when Bush Sr. made a coalition and took down Saddam, so the Rebbe was then pointing out the enormous miracles that happened. Again, similar to what was going on now. Scud missiles were hitting Israel. 39 Scud missiles hit Israel. And the Rebbe said Israel is the safest place in the world. And it was. One Scud missile like that sadly hit an American base and killed, I don't remember how many soldiers, a lot. And 39 Scuds came down on Israel, and maybe there were 2 deaths, maybe 2 or 3, and the rest, some person died from a heart attack. But buildings were destroyed. And for some reason everybody came out intact. There were some injuries, minor injuries. And that's exactly this deja vu. That's what we're seeing in Israel. We're seeing in Israel now what the Rebbe said then, that Israel is the safest place. There's nowhere in the world when you can have ballistic missiles come barreling in and into a building and exploding a building, and you don't have anybody died. I mean, it's so crazy. It's literally God is surrounding every Jew in Israel with 10 angels. There's no other way to explain it. It's absolutely stunning. I'm not even talking of the miracle where they empty out an entire hospital unit the night before because someone has an intuition that we should move the people out from that part of the hospital, and that hospital and that's the part that takes a direct hit. Is God not blowing us a kiss like this? Now, I'm not going to say he's blowing a kiss, because blowing a kiss you do when you're far away. He's actually there kissing the people from close. And he wants us to see it. He's doing the miracles as part of nature, because that's the whole point of Mashiach. Point of Mashiach is the world and God are unified, are married with each other. So he doesn't like to break the world. He wants to unify, but he wants to show us his presence. And he wants to show the entire world how precious the Jewish people are to him. And like the other story, that's one of them. They emptied out, and then The other one is that a shul. I mean, if you're going to write the books, if you're going to do interviews in Israel, and just interview throughout the miracles that were going on are just, they're indescribable. It does not happen anywhere else in the world. It does not happen. It happens only in Israel because that's God's chosen land and his people are there. That's where the miracles take place. So another just interesting one to point out was there was a synagogue that was hit, a shul that was hit in Chulan. And the shul has the morning services. So you have various different times because people come in and pray, and then some people rise early, so they do the service earlier in the morning, like 6 in the morning, and then there are those who do the later minyan, so they'll come in like 7:30 and so on. This particular shul had one time for prayer at 6. I don't know when it began, but the prayer was over at 7:05 a.m. The next service began 7:15. It means a whole new group of people. Now, usually, between the two, some people mingle, Some people stay around, but I guess because of the intensity, the tension in Israel, because of the sirens, people are supposed to stay next to the safe places. So it could be because of that. There was this tiny window between 7:05, one minyan left. A minyan is a quorum of at least 10 people. 7:15, the new minyan was going to come. So between 7:05 and 7:15, that's when this massive missile takes a direct hit right at the synagogue. This is stunning. These are miracles on steroids. This is biblical. This is just absolutely crazy. So this is a repeat, but even bigger, because you can't compare the Scuds that Saddam sent in 1991 to the ballistic missiles that Iran, filled with explosives, is sending now in 2025. The capability, the explosive, the punch of those missiles is so much more, the force of those missiles are so much greater. It's absolutely amazing. So let's take a look what the Rebbe said. And hear these words. The Rebbe is saying, the Rebbe is pointing that these are such stunning. This is a letter, and I'm quoting you from a letter that the Lubavitcher Rebbe writes to all the Jewish people on the 25th day of Adar, 25th day, which, by the way, it was also the 25th day. It's the 25th day of the month of Sivan, and this is the 25th day of the month of Adar. And by the way, we got something on the 25th day of the month of Sivan when America attacked those missiles, also from the Rebbe. Bear with me. Prophecy. Absolutely stunning prophecy. What does it say? 25th day of Adar. It's a letter the Rebbe sends to the Jewish people that they should recognize the miracle that God is doing for us. And that the Rebbe is pointing out that they are messianic. Okay? But he says, and it's a letter the Rebbe wrote in Yiddish. I'm going to quote you verbatim because it's so important, this message. Leute natürliche Umstände in der Welt, according to the world of nature, the regular circumstances of nature, hat es gehalten dabei, the situation was that, as soll sein nicht nur a Milchama Erklärung, it shouldn't only be a declaration of war, nor as the Milchama soll reinziehen mehrere Völker, but the stage was set, he's talking about in 1991, that the war should pull in other players, other nations should get involved, in sich zu flackern in a Weltkrieg. And then the war, because more nations would join on, like the nature of such things, when there's a conflict, and especially when it's beginning to brew and to boil over, other nations who have various different conflicting interests get involved. And before you know it, it's tzeflackeren means it suddenly, it goes ablaze out of control. To turn into a world war. That's what he said. We were so close to it boiling over into a world war. Rahman al-Islam, may God watch. And therefore, and now he says, but completely beyond the natural order. is nicht bloß ausgemitten geworden a Weltmilchama. Not only was it avoided a world war, not euch, but also die schein angeheubene Milchama is eingestellt geworden. The war that already started came to a very quick end. It was ended. And the Rebbe says, that is stunning. Do you hear the fever that was going on the last few days? Was it all the warnings? Why was everybody warning Trump not to get involved? He's going to get involved. Who knows the consequences? Iran is going to, there's going to be repercussions. There's going to be who knows. And Russia, I'm going to say a big idiot there from Russia goes and makes his comment that we're going to supply that the previous president of Russia, not Putin, some other whatever maniac. He says he's going to supply, other nations are going to supply Iran, now that they took out their capabilities, making with nuclear warheads or something like that. That was the talk that you were starting to hear. Leave it up to the UN, that's what would happen. and instead, what happens? It's not even 48 hours after the attack. We have suddenly a ceasefire. I mean, when I say 48 hours after the attack, I mean after the America got involved. Again, I'm not sure the ceasefire will hold. I don't know. But it's interesting how the Rebbe speaks about that. Beis alles semanim, we continue. While all the signs were showing, as medarv der warten a schwere milchama, that we are waiting for a difficult war. Und zugreiten agor groisa armee, and we have to prepare a huge army. Mit tasach klezayin, with lots of weapons. Und dafke von the neiste, and we should use the most advanced weapons. Is noch die alle zugreitungen. So after all these preparations, he says there seder them greit sich zu a lange milchama, which is the way it is when you prepare yourself for a prolonged conflict, for a prolonged war. Was darf doyer in Wochen, which needs to be weeks or chadashim or months, is der Netzachen gekommen in Gora kurze Zeit. The victory happened short and sweet. The Netzachen is gewähnt, and here and this is the line. Again, because you hear rabbis, you hear people, there's going to be a bloodbath, and millions are going to die, and Gog and Magog, and everybody's dying, and it's going to be, and that. And I know there is all kind of biblical sources, midrashic sources. Yeah, but thank God we have our Rebbe, who also knows of all these biblical sources, and all of these midrashic sources, of all the millions of dead and all of that, and yet talks a different language. A language that is now appropriate for Moshiach coming, because all the pain and all the suffering we've done already. So now watch this. The Netzachen is given as winderlich. The victory was so wondrous as hat nicht nur vermitten asach shviches damim. Not only did it avoid a lot of spilled blood, Suvishin umaysa olam, amongst Gentiles. Not talking about Jews even. Israel was protected is one thing. But that so little people were like they were scared, not gebrachtet sie, but brought as their Seine soll befreien. It brought that the enemy should release the POWs. The Rebbe over there wasn't any Jewish hostages, but there were POWs that were somehow, because when the United States began the bombing campaign, it wasn't just the United States, it was a coalition. The Iraqis were able to shoot down some of those planes. Some, very few. And as a result of that, some pilots who parachuted out were caught and were taken as prisoners. Iraq then, because they were so defeated, they were so overwhelmed, that as a gesture, so that this is before Saddam was taken down completely. Again, this is the first time when he was left in power, but his arms were twisted so much that he released all those POWs. in viele from the Gefangenen, and even old prisoners that he had from an earlier time, he also released. So I wonder, it's not going to be to me a shock if the hostages in Gaza are going to be released within the next. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the wheeling and dealing is. I can tell you one thing, that Iran is on its knees now. You saw that from their response to the United States. They're threatening because they have to flex their muscles in front of their people if they want to have some measure of respect left. But they had the most ridiculous response. A few missiles that they hit, and they shot at Qatar, and they warned before that they're doing it. And like Trump said today, a weak response just to save face, just to get it out of their system. So they are finito. They are completely, they're literally on their knees. So it wouldn't be shocking to me if we're going to see the hostages from, because we all know Hamas, Iran, it's one coalition. They're one group. So let's see. I don't know. Let's hope. Let's hope for the miracles to be completed. I just wanted to show you this because for those that are wondering, hey, the war ended so fast. Come on, the action should have been 12 days done. No. This is exactly what we want. Israel accomplished its goals. I think Netanyahu wanted to give them a little more. I think he had a few other. I think that's why Trump gave him a window now, another 6 hours. I think tonight they were still bombing, and I'm not sure, but definitely. I would say, I don't know, again, I would definitely a huge majority of Israel's interests and goals in this war were met. And for sure, they completely took out, together with the help of the United States, the Iranian threat of nuclear weapons. And we're very close, obviously. Again, whether yeah or no, I don't know. I'm not a prophet. Whether it's going to bring to a complete regime change and an overthrow of them, very possible. But and even if not, the Iranians. I just heard something that there were some guarantors. Israel's agreeing that guarantors from, I don't know from who, again, this is what they said on Israeli news just before. I heard it before. Again, if it's true or not, obviously now everything is not verified yet. There were guarantors that Iran is never ever going to go back to seeking nuclear weapons. Now, do we trust them or not? That's a different story. But I guess, and it's being done in a way, Israel is not stupid. They're going to be doing it in a way where it can be watched and guarded. So this is stunning. This is absolutely stunning. The dates are stunning. The campaign was stunning. But what gets me so excited, and I should get everybody excited, is that Israel and the Jewish people were, number one, courageous, but most important is that their courage is coming from their connection to God. It's the first time the Israeli government is openly crediting God with their successes. And that is the game changer. God was always there in Israeli wars. Without God being there, we would have never gotten off our feet in 48. Israel is the only country that the first day they were declared on the 5th day of Iyar, I don't know which day, English date was, of 1948, was declared, the Israeli state was declared, Israel was declared as a state. The next day, they were attacked. Before you even had a chance to even lick an envelope and put it in the thing with an Israeli stamp. Before you had a chance to do anything, they were already attacked by all surrounding countries, 6 countries. I don't know how many came at them. The fact that they won, they were able to fend it off and then come out victorious then is absolute. It's crazy. It's a miracle. And then the 6-Day War, miracles, and the Yom Kippur War, miracles, and miracles without an end. Everybody knows Israel is entire. But the Israeli secular government had a hard time admitting to it. And they boasted their own power and their own genius and military genius. And the Rebbe said that Moshiach would have been here after the 6-Day War. But because in Israel, they took the credit to themselves and they did not recognize God for it, that's where the whole redemption was pushed off. So now, when before the war begins, Benjamin Netanyahu, let's call him by his Hebrew name, Binyamin Netanyahu, goes to the Kotel, the holiest site in Judaism, prays by the Holy Wall for the success, writes a note to God for the success, puts on a talit openly identifying as a Jew, puts on a kippah, a talit, connects. That was the game changer. But that he went back last night, Netanyahu goes back to the wall and again puts on the talit and thanks God openly for the miracles that happened. And it was beautiful because he wrote, in the first note he wrote, an Am Kelavi, a people, taking a verse from Parshat Balak, where it says, Am Kelavi, Yakum, a people will get up like a lion. He writes there, to God, that the Jewish people are rising like a lion. Yeah, this is before he knows he'll be successful. But he knows that what God wants of us is preemptive. Right? And how does he know? Because the Rebbe told him. The Lubavitcher Rebbe told Netanyahu a bunch of times. Peace through strength. Show tremendous strength. Don't be afraid. He writes that to God in Am Kalavi Yakum, prays for the success of it. Comes back 10 days later, writes a note. This time he doesn't say Am Kalavi Yakum, he says Am Kalavi come. The nation like a lion rose, not will rise, but rose. He's coming back to God and saying, we did it. High five. That's what it was. It was a high five between Netanyahu and Hashem. And in this case, Netanyahu don't look at his externalities. Right now he's very Jewish. He's operating from the deepest part of his neshama, from his soul, and he is coming there representing all the Jewish people. And that was a high five. We got up like a lion, God, and you came down roaring like a lion. It's lion to lion. Someone pointed out, Rabbi Kaplan, I said, very nice. He says, Netanyahu goes there and writes, Am Kalavi Yakum, and on that very day, 17th of Sivan, the opening verse in the Torah is Vayibn Soa Aron, when the ark with the tablets were traveling. Vayoma Moshe, what does Moshe say? Kuma Hashem, get up, God. So God says, I'm getting up, but I want you to get up together with me. It's God getting up and the Jewish people getting up in unison. And now, after Hashem and the Jewish people gets up together to do this whole exercise over here, for an entire week or 10 days, we were doing things together. Hashem and the Jewish people recognizing God. And I forgot to say, Netanyahu continues and goes to the Knesset and speaks on national television and says that the most important partner in the Knesset is Siyata Dishmaya, is the help of God. That's unprecedented in Israel for an Israeli. That is God's blessing right over there. That's what God has been waiting for the last 75 years from the Israeli government. This is tshuva. This is repentance. This is a turn to God. This is beautiful. Yes, they didn't learn yet all the laws of Muktzah. I know that. And we should teach them the laws of Muktzah on Shabbos, what you can move, what you can't do. And we should help bring our brothers together to keep more kashrut and all the things, and that they should only eat badatz hechsher. I know all those things. We should do everything to it, and we all should get better in all our ways. But we need to appreciate how God is looking at this, that the Jewish people are turning to Him and trusting in Him and connecting to Him. And they're rising, and God rises. And who's the third one to rise? Also in Bilam's prophecy, who's the third one to rise? Moshiach. The star will rise from Jacob. V'kam shevet Yisroel. And a ruling staff will get up from Israel. Who's the ruling staff? Get up! We've risen. Hashem has risen. Everybody rose together. We're waiting for Mashiach to rise. Gimel Tammuz is coming just around the corner. We're waiting for Mashiach to rise. This is where we're at right now. This is just stunning. Okay, since we're at the verse of Hen Am Kalavi Yakum, so I'll share with you things that regarding this, just the rising. So this I also heard from Rabbi Kaplan, which was really nice. Thanks to someone who sent me his share. It was really, he gave, I think, 4 or 5 classes on this whole thing, worth listening to. But I hope he doesn't mind that I'm going to take one of the things that he pointed out that I saw, which I thought was fantastic. But it's even more fantastic now, because when he said it, it was still at a certain point in the war. Listen to it now. It says, the verse says the Jewish people will rise like a lion. So the Ibn Ezra, look at the Ibn Ezra. There's many commentaries. So Rashi says, by the way, we rise in the morning and we put on a talit, we grab the mitzvot, we put on a talit. We put on tzitzit, we put on we do the mitzvah, we grab the mitzvahs. And it's like, it's so special because Netanyahu stands by the wall and he doesn't wear tzitzis. When was the last time you saw Netanyahu wear tzitzis? Yet, when he goes to write this to God, that I'm Kalavi Yakum, he wears a talit when he's doing it. I mean, I don't know, did Netanyahu read the Rashi before and say, oh, Rashi? Maybe. He's actually pretty well learned. He could learn, So he could have opened the Chumash, checked it, and so Rashi says you got to wear tzitzis, and he couldn't be put on the tzitzis. Well, Rashi says also say Shema, and Rashi also says to wear the tefillin. He didn't do that, at least not here openly, but he wore the tzitzis. The first thing Rashi says, the tzitzis. And he wore the talit. Very, very amazing. But the Ibn Ezra says that this is talking about a special type of a war. I think this gives me the goosebumps. Listen to this. Ramaski and Natzach Malchei Kana. This is a remez. This is Bilam, who is now prophesying that the Jewish people are going to defeat the kings of Canaan when they were going to go into the land of Canaan. V'akar v'ladas hadavar akar. What is close to what makes sense to me, he says, that they're not only going to defeat their enemies, but it's going to be in a special way. It's going to be in the manner of the war against the Midianites. Listen to these words. There was never a war, unheard of, such a war before that, like that ever. In what sense? In every war, there are people that fall from both sides. When the Jewish people went out to wage war against Midian, to take revenge against the Midianites, when God sent Moshe, and Moshe sends Elazar, the son of Aaron, to go out with the battle, takes 12,000 soldiers, and they wage war. They killed 32,000 of the enemy. Not one soldier died. Not one, in that entire military exercise, not one Jew was killed, and they killed 32,000 of the enemy. And they killed 5 kings and 32,000. That's huge. I ask you, Israel took down one of the mightiest militaries in the world now. Not one Israeli soldier was killed or shot down over Iran during this entire thing. The Mossad and the Israeli agents were working inside Iran in the craziest, wildest. I don't know. Maybe we don't know. But from what we know, we haven't heard of one. And I'll take it even a step further. Not one soldier even got an injury. I haven't heard of one wounded soldier. Now, Iran attacked back and hit Israel, and it was horrific. Those missiles, notwithstanding the miracles, it was horrific, and the terror and the scare and the anxiety and when you see these missiles for little children and for elderly people, and people were hurt and people were injured and people died. By the way, Israel estimated between, I'm not sure, I saw numbers, but this still needs to be verified. I know their numbers were between 800 and 4,000 that they thought would die in Israel. But those numbers might have been for the first night. That from the first response that Iran would respond, Israel was counting. They knew that, in other words, this mission was so important that even if it would cost 4,000 people, you still have to do it, because you cannot let a threat of a nuclear Iran. You can't let that. The thought was 800 to 4,000. Now, what I don't know, if the 800 to 4,000 was the first round or the entire war. I don't know. All in Israel, 24 people died. I mean, that's painful. But you cannot ignore the impossibility of that. The impossibility of it. It's stunning. And those are the Iranians are terrorists. They're killing, they're targeting civilians. But the soldiers, okay, it was mainly done by the Israeli Air Force, but in Iraq, and even Iraq, American planes were taken down. Not that many, but some were. Here, this Kilavi. Now, being that we're there, let me share with you a Zohar. On the words Am Kilavi, so I found the Zohar Shabbos in the morning. I said, I got to check the Zohar on this. Rabbi Abba says, this is a clear prophecy in the Zohar, that Bilam, thousands of years ago, is looking ahead of time, and he says, Hein Am Kilavi Yakum. These are a people that rise like a lion. Zeminon Hai Ama Lamekam Al Kol Amim. This nation is going in the future to rise over all the nations. Ovdei Avodah Zarah, those that serve idols. Ka'aryeh Gibor v'takef, like a mighty lion. V'yisrame alayu, and they will throw themselves on top of them. That's exactly what happened. The attack on the first night was like that. Like a lion charges and jumps on its prey. Then the Zohar continues, but unlike a lion that likes to sit on its prey, as a trophy, it likes to sit on its prey, Israel will not do that. They will not lie down and relax. They'll go back. Again, what the Zohar means in that statement, I don't know. It's a mystery to me. But very interesting. So this is what we've seen. We've seen Israel rose like a lion. And they called it lion. See, God puts these thoughts into the heads of the leaders. Why did they call this? Because this was the prophecy. Now, I saw something else stunning in one of the Rebbe's talks. I don't have it in front of me. But the Rebbe spoke regarding this verse, regarding this pasuk. And the Rebbe says that the verse says that in Am Kalavi, there are people like a lion, Yakum, they will get up, Uka'ari, and like a lion, Yisna. So Lavi, what is a Lavi and what is an Ari? So some say Lavi is a female lion, and Nari is a male lion. So the verse is saying they will rise like a female lion, Uka'ari, and like a lion, Yisnasa, they will then be they'll elevate themselves. So the Balaturim is one of the commentators over here, and he translates that the Lavi The Rebbe brings the Balaturim, but I have to see where it is. Hold on. The Rebbe brings that, but I don't. Maybe the Balaturim is later because it mentions twice. I'm lovey. Here we go. There's another pasuk about am. Maybe it's the next time. Kara shachav kariyo kolavi miya kamenu. Okay, where is the Balaturim over here? Oh, kikein derech mit. Oh, so the Balaturim later. Oh, in verse number 10. The Balaturim says that this is the way of that. The Balaturim basically says that a Lavi is weaker than a Ari, and if it's the female lion, that would make sense. Even though the female lion is far more active, and usually she's the one who goes out to hunt much more. The male lion is usually lazy, right? But in physical brute strength, the male lion is stronger than, if someone is threatening the pride, the male lion goes to war. So the Balaturim says when it says they will rise like a Lavi, it's first a lesser power, and then they will gradually ascend to a much higher power, like a lion, like a male lion. This is what the Balaturim says. So the Rebbe brings, however, a Zohar. I didn't look up the Zohar, where the Zohar says reverse. The Zohar says that the Lavi, that Ari, a lion, is strong, but the Lavi is Takef Yoiser, is even stronger. Not sure if the Zohar learns that Lavi is a female lion, or maybe the Zohar, because someone was pointing out to me, a female lion should be called Leviah, at least in modern Hebrew. So I'm not sure if maybe the Zohar learns an Ari is a certain type of a lion, and a Lavi is a different type of a lion. I'm not sure what kind of different lions there are. But it's a stronger lion. So the Zohar is learning, but then the question is, the Rebbe asks the question. So then why does it say the people will rise like a Lavi and then like a lion? Usually you go gradually. So the Rebbe gives a stunning answer. The Rebbe says, this verse is talking at the time of the redemption. That's what's so exciting now. So I'm saying, when you're seeing this going down, you realize we have arrived to the redemption. These events that we are watching now are the end time events. Now, I don't like using the term end times because it's not the end time, it's the beginning of time. It's the most beginning of the most beautiful moment. This is where the world was created for these moments. But since it's the time of the Geulah, the Rebbe says, and he doesn't give much explanation, he says, it's after the work of refinement is finished. The work of refinement means that you take that, there's a Kabbalistic idea that for thousands of years, from the entire history of the world, there is a mixture of good and evil, and our job is to separate the good from the evil, extract sparks from it, and to separate. And then once Moshiach comes after everything is separated. And what that does in the world separates the good from the evil. Now the evil remains then lifeless. You want to see lifeless evil? Go to Times Square and watch the protesters there who are standing and cheering for Iran, that Iran should destroy Israel. This is what you have people that way today's days. They've so insanely joined into this Jew hatred with such a pure insanity without any explanation. It's crazy. But here's the thing. There's nothing there anymore. It's just plain empty shells. It's plain empty dregs. There's no life to it. Anybody with a little bit of decency realizes that they're hollow dirt. That's all that's there. So when the evil still is holding on to sparks of holiness, then they have real power. Then when you fight them, you have to gradually build your energy to fight them. This is my interpretation of what the Rebbe is saying. Once the evil is a pinata, that means there's no energy anymore. So then they look big, but they're not big. So the way you take them down is initially you have to give them a powerful punch, but it's a one-shot knockout. It's like in a boxing ring. You know, sometimes you merit to see the not that I watch boxing, but I've seen when you see a knockout on the first round, it's just they hardly get warmed up. The guy puts in such a knocks out. The Rebbe says that's Geulah, because after you've given the first punch, it automatically just disappears. It just disintegrates. And I think that's what you saw in this war. It was the first night. It was that surprise attack. After that, Israel is just continuing with its exercises and all that. But they're getting, and you saw every day, mostly, Iran's responses were weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And like, it's just not amazing. Am Kalavi. So we covered the idea that Netanyahu thanked God, which is huge. The Jewish people have attached themselves to God. This, the ideas of Kalavi Yakum, how it's fitting in with everything that it states is going to be at the time of the redemption. The incredible teaching of the Zohar, that this is actually referring in the end of days that the Jewish people will throw themselves on the enemy and defeat them. Now I want to talk a little bit about the United States getting involved on this Shabbat and throwing the devastating punch. That kind of was the... Someone sent a meme, you know. It's good when the Jewish people are able to laugh. When their enemies fall, we're able to laugh. So someone said that, you know, by a chasana, by a wedding, there is the various different kibudim. Kibudim is that people are given certain honorees under the chuppah. Right? So you call up this one, the uncle of the bride gets to say a blessing. And the chuppah is set up that way. There are many different honors you can give. So there are 7 blessings. From the 7 blessings, the last one is considered the most important one. It's called bracha achrita, the last one. And you look for an important guest to give it, a grandfather, a big rabbi. You also sometimes give it to someone who's got a good chazan, or someone who knows how to sing and do a little, say that blessing, because it's got more words, that one, so you can do more chazanut, more of the singing to it. Bracha achrita. So the person says, it's like there was this meme saying that Israel honored Donald Trump with bracha achrita, with the last, it's like the makabapatish, the final thing, because Israel really was the one who did the hard work. Israel were the ones who risked their lives. America deserves great gratitude and to be thanked for what they did, and Trump deserves a medal for this, what he did, and he's definitely going to be rewarded by God. I believe very, very closely that God saved him when that bullet missed him, and I don't know what else he's going to do, but for this alone, he deserved that miracle. He deserved that miracle for this moment, and but it's important, there are those in the United States that scream America first, America first. So first of all, it's important to understand, obviously, that the Iranians looked at Israel as the small Satan and America as the big Satan. And once they had nuclear capabilities, they wouldn't hesitate a minute to put them on a inter-ballistic missile and send them over to the United States. You realize the reason why Iran is so dangerous for them to have these nukes is because they celebrate death. There's no other country, the Russians are Russia, even North Korea. Kim Jong-un wants to live. He's having a good time in this world. He has all of his whatever parties that he has. He has everybody bowing down to him. He does whatever he wants. He wants to live. He doesn't want to die. He's not interested in, but these mullahs, they celebrate death. They don't care if they're going to be blown to smithers, if they're going to take everybody with them. They just don't care. So that's why you cannot let them have nuclear weapons. Forget about, from an American perspective, America first, you can never let them have such weapons. You can't. Because they don't care to use it, even though they know instantly they would be nuked, but they don't care. That's the one thing that every American needs to know. So, but in addition to that, if you are an American first person from a religious perspective, I'm not going to tell you this from but this is the truth. And every single person knows the truth deep inside their soul. God told Abraham, those who bless you and your children, I will bless those who bless you. Bottom line. America could not have done anything better for its own prosperity and for its own growth and for its own future than sticking its neck out for Israel. And America is blessed today exponentially more than they were yesterday and 2 days ago. Because the United States has the credit now. And it was scary because we didn't know the consequences. We didn't know necessarily what would happen. So this is a blessing for the United States. It's interesting, Netanyahu, when he went to the Kotel the second time last night, gave a blessing for President Trump and for America maybe too. A blessing but America has to know that more than what they did for Israel, they did for themselves with this. Because it's their blessing to the United States of America by having helped Israel. And millions of Americans know that. Hence the support. So, but what I do want to talk about a little bit is the stunning American strike and the timing, which is so cool, so neat. So first of all, this is something that I'm not the one who found this, but it was spreading around like wildfire on the Jewish chats. There is a certain system called the Daf Yomi, and the Daf Yomi is basically it's a study program where if someone wants to study the entire Talmud is huge. Many, many books. It's the basic. It's the backbone of rabbinic literature. There's other books too, but this is the backbone of rabbinic literature, and it's an aspiration for Jews to study the Talmud. Now, if you want to study the entire Talmud, that's already ambitious. It's not easy, but in the 1930s, there was a great rabbi who came up with an idea, and that if you study one full page every day, page meaning 2 sides, called a daf, then in 7.5 years, and you do it every single day, you finish all the Masechtot of, I think there are 36 tractates of Talmud. There's 60 with Mishnah, but just the Talmud with Gemara, 36 tractates. And they're thick, but it takes 7.5 years. I don't remember how many pages there are. 7.5 years to complete the entire Talmud, maybe between 2,000 to 3,000 pages. So in 7.5 years, you go through the entire Talmud. So he initiated that we should do it, that people should do it collectively, that Jews all over the world should study the same page. And he was very successful. His name was Rameir Shapiro. He was a rabbi in Poland, in Lublin. He initiated it. It became a program. And thanks to that, many, 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 many thousands and thousands of Jews study Torah. And every 7.5 years, more people join it. And it's a beautiful study. But everybody's on the same page. So what was really, really cool was that on Friday, the day before the strike, the page that was studied was in Tractate Avodah Zarah. Again, studied by hundreds of thousands of Jews across the world. Was Masechtas Avodah Zarah, Dav Beis. It was the first page of Tractate Avodah Zarah. On the second side of the page, there is a short commentary called the Tosfos. Tosfos is not always short; it's usually complicated and long, and it's not studied as part of the Daf Yomi, because Daf Yomi mainly is to learn the Talmud and the commentary of Rashi, which is basic explanation. Tosfos is already far more complicated, and it goes into in-depth study. So most people who do the Daf Yomi don't learn the Tosfos. However, sometimes Tosfos is very easy and small little Tosfos, and you'll add them. This Tosfos is a short little Tosfos. So basically over there, it mentions in the Talmud that there will be two empires that will last until the coming of Moshiach, until Moshiach's arrival. From the ancient empire, the Talmud is talking 2,000 years ago. And the Talmud is predicting, based on their knowledge, the rabbis had great knowledge gleaned from that they can see in prophecy, that there will be two empires that will actually greet Mashiach. They will be at the end of days. And that is the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire. Now Rome doesn't mean Rome as we recall it, ancient Rome. Rome is pieced together. They have a constant Rome what's the word? Reinvents itself throughout history. But initially, the Romans were the Edomites, the children of Esau, and they lived in the south of Israel. Then some of their offspring somehow went down to Italy and were the seeds of the Roman Empire. That's what it's explained by all the commentators, all the biblical commentators. And so the Roman Empire is really the descendants of Esau, which is from the land of Edom, which is a land in one of the Middle Eastern countries close to Israel. Not sure exactly which is the land of Edom. But that it evolved into Rome and into the Roman Empire. But when the Roman Empire collapsed, it was kind of translated into the Christian church and the Christian West, which includes the United States of America and so on and so forth. Last manifestations. So the Talmud says that the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire are going to last till Mashiach. Like we see actually now. And when we say Persia, we mean Persia and the Arab. So I just saw today in Maharal, I think in the book of Maharal, where the Maharal says that the Persians and the Arabs the Maharal was a 16th century great philosopher and Jewish thinker. They converge and become kind of one. So you see that happened in Persia, in ancient Persia, which is now run by the radical Muslims. In any case, what happens? So Tosfos asks the question, you're saying that Persia and Rome will last till Mashiach comes? Well, it says in a different tractate, in tractate Yoma Daf Yud, I studied that page today in depth. Yoma Daf Yud. Yoma means the passage that talks about Yom Kippur. And over there is, the Talmud has a debate, two opinions, about who is going to destroy who. One major empire, one major force in the world is going to destroy another empire. So the first opinion of the Talmud is that the Persians are going to collapse the Romans. And again, Rome doesn't mean Rome only, it means the Rome descendants. So according to that depiction, the mullahs in Iran would overcome the West. That's one opinion. Then the Gemara goes, the Talmud, and the Talmud turns it around and brings another opinion in the name of Rav that says the opposite, that the Romans are going to defeat the Persians. Asida Roim. I'm going to read you the words of the Mishnah. Oh, I have. That's why I brought the Talmud over here. Here are the words. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Amar Rabbi Rebbe. Asida Roimi shetipral beyad paras. Rome will fall in the hands of the Persians. And it brings a verse. And the Gemara asks, hold on. And then the Talmud brings another opinion. Amar Rav says the opposite. Asida paras shetipral beyad Roimi. That the Persians are going to fall in the hands of the Romans. The Talmud has a very interesting question that doesn't seem to fit. The Persians have a certain merit. What's the merit of the Persians? They were the ones who built the second temple. The Romans have a stain on them. They were the ones who destroyed God's temple. So the Talmud says, then does it make sense that the builders should fall? That the builders of the temple, those who assisted the Jewish people, should be defeated by those who destroyed it? Is that God's reward? Is that the way it should be? So the Talmud answers, and he says, yeah, but you know what? Gzeras Melech, it's a decree of the king. It's God's will. And there's a lot of interesting commentary on that, which I'm not going to get into right now. It's a class unto its own. Because I researched this today. In any case, then the Talmud says, the Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav, Ein ben David ba, the son of David will not arrive. That means the Moshiach will not arrive. Tifshait Malchus Roimi Arisha b'chol ha'olam. Until the kingdom of Rome, over here it calls it the wicked kingdom of Rome, will spread over the whole world. So Tosfos, going back to the first passage, when it says that both these empires are going to arrive to Mashiach, to the days of Mashiach, so Tosfos asks, here it says that Rome will defeat Persia, and will rule over the world. And there we say that the Persian Empire will be until Mashiach comes. So Tosfos says, yeah, Persian will last until right before the redemption, and then Rome will topple them. And then Rome will then be the sole ruler for 9 months. Okay. So by the way, for those of you who like if we say that so that was on Friday. That was Tosfos, the commentary. Hundreds of thousands of Jews who studied the Daf Yomi studied that this past Friday. And then what happens on Saturday? The king of Rome. Trump is going to love if I call him the king of Rome. The leader of the entire West, the most powerful leader on the West, led a strike. You'll say Persia is still standing. The Iranian government is still standing. Yes, but they have nothing to live for anymore. That government, their entire ambition, everything was that they would destroy Israel. That's what it was. They have no other agenda other than that. And that has been knocked out. So it's as if their influence here's the point, their influence is gone. They're a nobody now. They're a non-player. That's it, basically. They became irrelevant now. Basically. So it says so. And again, the timing was interesting. So we know this is supposed to happen before Mashiach comes. That Rome is supposed to take down Persia. And it happened. Okay. But it happened in a way that is to assist the Jewish people, to assist Israel and to assist the Jewish people in the most beautiful way. let's understand something really, really fascinating. What I'm sharing with you right now is really just... So I'm teaching a class last week. Every week I teach a certain class on Thursday in Hebrew, a Zoom class that I teach to Israel. And I teach the Rebbe's talk of the last year the Rebbe spoke, Parsha Shalach. So I'm reading this. And in footnote 156, in the end of the Rebbe's talk of Parsha Shalach, now this past Torah portion that we read was Parshat Shalach, this Shabbos. So there was the week. It's like when you're reading the Rebbe's Torah, you're reading it, and you're reading something in there that's talking about. So let's take a look at the date. The date this past Shabbat was the 25th day of Sivan. Okay. So I'm teaching this on Thursday, and I'm reading here, and I'm saying, hey, the Rebbe is talking about something that's supposed to happen on the 25th day of Sivan. A very good thing for the Jews. What is the good thing that's supposed no, he doesn't say something that's supposed to happen, something that happened. What happened? So the Rebbe brings that let me read to you the Rebbe's blessing, and because then you'll understand the context. So the Rebbe concludes his talk. This is in 1991. This is the Lubavitcher Rebbe talking, Parsha Shalach. Okay. That year, 1991, Shabbat, Shabbos Parsha Shalach, Saturday, was the 26th of Sivan. Friday was the 25th of Sivan. So the Rebbe is making reference to the day before, the Friday, and how important this past Friday was. Listen to this. If this is not prophecy, I don't know what this is. So he says like this: "V'chein ti alonu," and so should be to us. Sheteka from miyad mamish, that instantly now, b'yoyim zeh, on this day, Yom HaShabbos Kodesh, on the day of Shabbos, Parsha Shalach, miskayemes bepoyel mamish. It becomes fulfilled in the literal sense. Habesura, the great news, shebeparshas hashavua, that is in the parsha of the week. What's the great news that becomes fulfilled? Bisar lehem sheyiknesu la'aretz, that the Jewish people receive the news that they are granted permission to go into the land. Ukasiyim v'chaisem haftorah, and like it says in the end of the haftorah, the parsha of the Navi, the prophets, because every week we read Chumash, we read Torah, and we read a portion of prophets. So the portion of prophets has to do with Joshua that we read this past Shabbat. It talks about Joshua sending the spies. So over there it says that when the spies were in Jericho, they were hiding. This lady, the innkeeper, who they were talking to, her name is Rachav, she tells them, you have no need anymore to spy over here. I'm just telling you one thing. Everybody's terrified of you. Nosan Hashem b'yadeinu es kol haaretz. God gave into our hands the entire land. V'gam no'moigu kol yoshrei haaretz mipaneinu. They melted. All the inhabitants of the land melted in front of us. So the Rebbe says that on this Shabbos should be fulfilled that the psura of going into the land of Israel, that all those that are living in the land of Israel, or next to those that are trying to stop the Jewish entry into the land of Israel, shall be fulfilled what she said then, that all the inhabitants are terrified from the Jewish people and have melted. Okay. So the Rebbe continues, including that even in the last minutes of the exile, it means even before Mashiach comes, the Jewish people stand with an enormous strength to protect the land of Israel regarding all the pieces of land that God gave to us already. In other words, when Mashiach will come, we're going to have more land. But even that we stand with strength regarding that which God gave us. And he says these words, Shaloi lahachzer chas v'shalom, not to return, God forbid, even one footstep of land from the land of Israel to the nations of the world. Not giving to the Arabs or anybody even one footstep of Israel. And that's part of what it should be fulfilled, that Jews have the guts to stand strong and not to relinquish even 1 inch of land. So on that, he brings a footnote. And he says, well, the fact that it's connected to the date, the Rebbe says, it's connected. This that we have, that we don't relinquish even the smallest little parcel of land of Israel, which, by the way, we know the Rebbe fought for ferociously, that the Jews should not, that Israel should not consider ever land for peace. It's peace for peace, not land for peace. And everybody sees today how the Rebbe is right. You don't get peace when you give land. When you show weakness, you get carnage and terrorism and death. When you show strength, Jews will live peacefully in the land of Israel. Anyways, but he says like this. He says there was an event that happened on the 25th day of Sivan in the time of the Second Temple era. In the Second Temple era, an event happened on the 25th day of Sivan, which is connected to what? To Jewish people having full grip on their land and revoking or refuting all the whoever is challenging them on their ownership of the land of Israel. What is it? So the Rebbe is referring to a certain date that is recorded in a special book called Megillas Tainus. Megillas Tainus was an old scroll that Jews had in their possession in the time of biblical times, in which it was recorded in that book, in that scroll, days of great miracles that happened for the Jewish people, and therefore these days are X'd off on the calendar that you're not allowed to fast on these days. It's called the fasting Megillah, but it's not about fasting, it's about when we're not allowed to fast, because it's a happy day. So, and in that scroll is full of stories. This event happened. Most of these stories are not known to us today anymore. We don't have that. We don't follow it. We don't keep these holidays. They're mini holidays. They used to be kept in those days. Hanukkah and Purim are one of those holidays. Those are the big ones. But all the other ones are not. But they still exist, and you can look up Megillas Tainus, and you can read it. So the Rebbe says there is a insert over there about the day of the 25th day of Sivan. What happened? In the days of Alexander the Great, when Alexander the Great conquered, the whole civilized world, many nations came to Alexander to air out their grievances. In other words, he was now the king over the nations, a little bit like Trump's, kind of type of personality. And if you had complaints on anybody else, you came to Alexander to make your claim. And if Alexander would say, because he had full sovereignty over the whole world, nations were all underneath him. So if he would say, hey, you wronged, this people wronged you guys got to return whatever, then that's the way it is. Because he was like acting as the judge, the policeman of the whole world. So some Jew haters decided that there's a good opportunity to challenge the Jewish people from having their land of Israel. So there were 3 different groups who submitted a claim to Alexander's judge that they want to bring the Jewish people to the international court, to the Hague, of those times. And again, overseeing it all was Alexander the Great. Now the Jews knew that usually these things don't bide well for them, because even though they might have all the good arguments, when the world is blind with hate, they don't want to see. So they were nervous. They were summoned to the court by Alexander. They had to come. So the Jews were having a debate. Who should they send to argue it out? And no one wanted to go. And there was one person who was a limping person. His name was Geulah ben Pesach. I think he was limping, or maybe he had a hunchback. I'm not exactly sure. He wasn't the most prominent and the most best looking representative. And he says, I'm going to go. And the sages weren't too happy with him going. But then they decided, and he said to them, listen here, if I win, it's going to be awesome, because then even like a secondary type of a guy won them in the debate. And if I lose, they're going to say, it doesn't mean that the rabbis can't defeat him. It's just whatever. It's a second. They didn't send anybody that's like an important person. In the end, the rabbis felt they trusted him. He went. When he got there, he was first challenged by the Canaanites, the ancient Canaanim. Canaanim are the dwellers of the land of Israel before the Jewish people came in. And the Canaanim said, we're going to prove it from the Jewish Torah that they stole our land. Because in the Jewish Torah it says to the children that the land of Israel is called the land of Canaan. And the Jewish people came into the land, they stole our land. So Geulah ben Psisa answers them. And he says, well, if we're using the Torah document, then you can't just pick and choose. You gotta get the whole deal. What does it say in that document? It says that when after the flood, Noah cursed his grandson Canaan, and he said that he will be a servant to his brothers. He will be a slave to his brothers. Whatever a slave purchases, whatever a slave owns, belongs to his master. So if you own land, but you are a slave to your brothers, if you're using the Torah to say that this is your land, true, it's your land. But if it's yours, it's ours. Because Noah has already established, and again, this was in the time when slavery was common. It wasn't like outdated. So Alexander listens, and he says, right, the Jews are right. There you go. So they ran, the Canaanim left with and knew that they stand no chance. They left. The next group that came in were Arabs. No, I'm sorry. The first group that came were the Arabs. And the Arabs said that the Jewish people, that the land of Israel was given to Abraham. That was the story. First group was the Arabs. And the Arabs said that the land of Israel was given to Abraham. And since we are grandchildren of Yishmael, Abraham has two sons, Isaac and Yishmael, we have a portion in the land. So Geulah ben Psisa proved, and he said, well, it says, if you're bringing me from the Torah, it says in the Torah that Abraham had many other sons from the second wife, and then later, before his death, he went and he gave them all gifts, and he sent them away far to the east, and he gave all that belonged to him to Isaac, his son. So it was a clear proof from the Torah, and Alexander liked it. He said, it says so, you guys are all basing it on the Torah, and therefore you're out. Then the Canaanim came, and they made their argument, and after the Jewish people proved that they were slaves, and as a result of them being slaves, whatever they owned to the master, they said, give us 3 days. This is what happened. They said, give us 3 days till we have an answer. Because they were going to come back with a response, but they didn't have an answer. So they picked themselves up and they fled. And they left all of their possessions in their homes, filled with, and that was a sabbatical year in Israel, where there was a lack of food because they weren't, and the Jewish people were able to go and get all these tribal whatever food, and everything they left them was now available for them, and they took it, and it ended up being a good assistance for the economy in Israel, and the king sided with the Jewish people and so forth. And then finally the Egyptians come and they make their argument. The Egyptians say that the Jewish people, when they left Egypt, left with an enormous amount of cash, because they loaned them all the stuff, and they ran away with it. They borrowed and never came back. So that was a good argument. You said you owe us a lot of, and they said with interest, it's like a lot of money. So what was his answer? Well, he says, okay, let's make a calculation of the Jewish people were enslaved by Egyptians, but they were never really their slaves. It's not like there was any kind of sale over here that they became their slaves. They just overpowered them and made them their slaves. They weren't really legally slaves to them. So the Egyptians owe the Jewish people wages. So he says, well, we have 400 years or 210 years. You have men, women, and children. All these people worked, millions of people, for all these, and they started crunching the numbers. And he said, how much the wages are, minimum wage. Let's talk minimum wage. They made the thing. And the amount of money that was astronomical of what they owed them. This was the first claim for reparations. And he says, let them pay us back for this, and this will be, and Alexander sided with the Jewish people in all three cases. With who? With this limping Geulah of Memphis. So it was checkmate, and he won. So the Rebbe over here, and now when did this court case happen? At the Hague of those days, overseen by this Gentile king, Alexander the Great. When did it happen? On the 25th day of Sivan. Now, what's even more stunning is, so the Rebbe says, wait, so look at this. So the Rebbe says, so hold it, he says. Again, I don't know what to say. To me, this is prophetic. The Rebbe says, you see that on the 25th day of Sivan is the day that even the arguments that until now are by certain nations that are challenging Israel's right to their land gets blown to smithers on that day, and there's no more complaints. And the Jews have their land without anybody challenging them. And the Rebbe doesn't say this, but I'm going to add one more. Who is validating that? A world leader, a king that's not Jewish, who kind of sides with the Jewish people and gives them their thing, and then it's done. Now that would be good on its own. What makes it even better is the Rebbe is insisting that event happened on the 25th day of Sivan. Why? Because he brings that there's another version that says that it happened on the 24th day of Nisan. So the Rebbe spends a whole footnote over here to explain why you can't say it was the 24th. Number one, the Rebbe says it's not the 24th, it's the 25th, and it's not Nisan, it's Sivan. And he says that these two months sound pretty much the same. That's why someone can make a mistake and they wrote down the wrong thing. And he explains and he proves it that it was Sivan. Why is the Rebbe so insisting it was the 25th day of Sivan? Okay, well, it's how many years later after 1991? It's 34 years later. 34 years later. On the 25th day of Sivan. You have to understand something. The entire backbone of the Palestinian cause is all Iran. All Iran. Who is backing up the Palestinian cause? With their right? Who's their backup? Saudi Arabia couldn't care less. The United Emirates couldn't care less. The rest of the Arab countries don't really care. They care because of the radicalism that's coming from Iran. That's what's creating this entire movement and this entire force. And that is gone. When? On the 25th day of Sivan. Now, the Rebbe speaks about that not only here. The Rebbe speaks about it in Tafshin Mem Beis. 9 years before this, the Rebbe spoke about it again on about the 25th day of Sivan, being such an important day. There, the Rebbe adds that the Canaanim, the ones who challenged the land, that the land belongs to them, they said, "Give us 3 days." So the Rebbe says the 3 days comes out. The Rebbe says the 24th, the 25th. Sorry. They said it happened on the 25th. It happened on the 25th. So the 3 days are the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th. That means on the 28th day of Sivan, it was slam dunk. It was over. They left. They ran away. That's when all the complaints were gone. So think about it. Trump's attack was on the 25th. Tonight, Trump announces war's over. It's all done. What's today? The 28th. 28th. Pretty neat. Pretty neat. What's the 28th day of Sivan? We spoke about the 25th day. What's the 28th day of Sivan? 28th day of Sivan is the day the Rebbe came to America. And the Rebbe said about today's date that the final phase of the Jewish people rectifying the world and lifting the world up to be ready for Moshiach begins on this day. Because the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin, the Rebbe and his wife, in 1941, arrived to the shores of America, set up their headquarters. The Rebbe didn't set it up. His father-in-law set it up. But the previous Rebbe knew that America really belongs to his son-in-law. It's the next generation. And it's clear from the Rebbe's talks that that's the way it is. So the Rebbe says that the real power of the day, today is the 28th of Sivan, Koach Sivan. Koach is 28, power. The power of the Torah to lift up the world. The Rebbe explains is only through America. That America is the final rectification. So if America is the final rectification, it also makes sense that America is going to pave the way for the final redemption, the United States of America, the President of the United States of America. Do you realize how this is all coming together in such a spectacular way? How long did this war last? I'm going to blow your mind now. How long did did this war last? It's being called the 12, if it stops, we don't know. If Israel and Iran have finally the ceasefire, Iran is kaput in terms of military power and influence. Okay, so they're making a ceasefire. Okay, good. But in any case, if it's true that this is it, it's 12 days. They're calling it the 12 doubles. It was a 6-day war, now it's the 12-day war. Stunning. When did it start? On the 17th day of Sivan. When did it end? On the 28th day of Sivan. 12 days. Are you ready? Are you ready? This is from my good friend, Rabbi Leeds. God granted me. He sent me this 10 minutes before the class. I almost jumped out of my skin. Those of you who are afraid of the Rebbe being Mashiach, close your YouTube right now and run for the hills, okay? I'm telling you right now, don't stay for the rest of the class. This is getting too good. This is too good, okay? So for those of you who can't handle it, it just gives you whatever, now's the time to shut, okay? If you're staying on, listen at your own risk. You might get doubts. So let me tell you about the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin. The Rebbe and the Rebbitzin were caught in 1941. They were caught in France in during the war, and it became very dangerous. The Nazis were... So somehow, through a lot of work from the previous Rebbe, who was already in America, and a lot of Chabad Chassidim, they were doing all the networking and all with the United States government and so on and so forth to get the Rebbe a visa to come to the United States and to get him, and it was very scary. The Rebbe managed, I think he went from France to Italy, and he got onto a ship in Lisbon, Portugal. And from there they sailed to the United States of America. The day the Rebbe left on that ship with his wife was on the 17th day of Sivan. They were on the boat for 12 days. It was a very dangerous trip during that time because the Nazis were patrolling around Europe and they were scared that the ship might be torpedoed or sunk. On the boat himself, the Rebbe sent a telegram to his father-in-law once they were out of European waters that they're kind of in a more safe place. It was 12 days until the 28th day of Sivan that the Rebbe walked onto the shores of America to rectify and elevate America. This war started on the 17th of Sivan. It ends exactly on the 28th of Sivan, corresponding exactly to the Rebbe's journey to America. War is like an ocean, like a stormy ocean, a ship The Rebbe comes to the United States of America. And again, the end of this war is declared by the United States president. It wasn't declared by Israel. The United States president put down his foot and said, listen, you guys are stopping this. The war is over. But it's because Israel finished the job. He didn't push Israel before Israel was ready. At least I think so. It has to do with the final rectification of Mashiach, that America is uplifted. And the Rebbe gives a whole talk on the last year, exactly after this talk that I just shared with you about the 20. The next talk, the Rebbe is talking about all the 28th of Sivan, how it's the ultimate rectification, lifting the world up from the bottom up. I even have a class called Bottoms Up to explain exact that talk where the Rebbe talks about from the bottom lifting the entire world up. Okay. Now let's take a look at the strike itself. Midnight hammer. Cain Tialano, right? We spoke about that already. Midnight hammer. Boom. 7 B-2 bombers. 7 B-2. And the way they were flying, at least the way they depicted, they show them on the, is they had 3 and 3 and 1 behind. So 3 and 3 and 1 behind. They flew 18 hours up to Iran. And in a stunning manner, they tricked them. They went in and out without any problem at all. They weren't even realized. They bombed and they left. It's just absolutely, it was an absolute stunning feat, military feat. They're going to be talking about this for many years. 3 and 3 with a 7th behind. When they came over the nuclear sites, they dropped 14 bunker buster bombs. They needed 7 planes because these MOPs, which are the name of these bombs, are 30,000 pounds each. So 30,000 pounds, and each plane can only carry 2 of them. And they needed to drop 14. So they had 7 planes. They dropped 14 MOPs. And then, altogether, they also used Tomahawk missiles that were fired from ships to various different sites, targeted precision strikes. Together, it was 75 munitions or 75 precision guided artillery or weapons that were fired off. So again, remember these numbers: 7, 14, 75. To me, it's symbolic. What's the symbolism in it? To me, it's the Rebbe's signature on this. Why? And I'm talking about Rebbe. Why am I saying Rebbe? Shouldn't I be talking about God? God did it all, of course. God led the Jewish people out of Egypt through an appointed messenger, and that is Moshe Rabbeinu. God is going to lead the world into the ultimate redemption through his appointed messenger, Moshiach Tzedkenu. There has to be, it must be through a human being who is God's representative, who is God's kingship is being funneled through him. That's a fundamental belief in Judaism, because if one believes, as Chassam Sofer says, if one believes in redemption, but not in the human being bringing the redemption, Chassam Sofer says that is considered outside of the pale of Judaism. Rambam says we have to believe in Moshiach, a person. That's why I'm emphasizing the whole time that there is someone doing this. It's not. However, till the actual moment of the Geulah, Mashiach is still hidden. Like it says in many sources, Mashiach will be revealed and concealed and then revealed again. So now there is the period of concealment. However, if you look a little better, and like I've done in hundreds of classes, all the events that we've been having over the last couple of years, you see the Rebbe's signature and everything. Even this now, that if the ceasefire, the end of the war happens on the 28th of Sivan, it's a very important day in Chabad. It's a very important day for the Jewish world. The Rebbe came to America. And the Rebbe spoke about the significance of the day. It's the ultimate effect of Torah on the world. It's the ultimate peace bringer that unifies heaven and earth, that brings peace to the world. It's the completion of the entire purpose of creation, to elevate and to connect the lowest place of existence and elevate it to God, which leads us to Moshiach. So let's look at these numbers. The Rebbe is number 7. When the Rebbe became Rebbe, the Rebbe said a discourse in which he described that in order to bring the Shekhinah down to the world, there are 7 heavens, and you got to bring the Shekhinah, the divine prayer. It comes through 7 righteous people. And the 7th one was Moses, who brought God down to the world the first time. But then, because of the sins and the destruction of the temples, God departed again. And the Messianic era, Moshiach, is also going to be after a series of 7 tzaddikim. And the Rebbe said, we are the 7th generation. He didn't want to see I, he said we, all of us. We are the 7th generation. The Rebbe is the 7th Chabad Rebbe. 6 jets, line 3 and 3. And the back one, that's the big one. The back one, the one that's powering all of them. Malchus, kingship. This is the configuration of the 7 powerful flying jets, B-2 bombs. Now, by the way, this is going to get really interesting if we would have the. I didn't research it, but there was someone who. People know that during the war, during the Second World War, from 1941 till 1945, the Rebbe worked in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and the Rebbe was involved in some top-notch work for the United States military in terms of building certain very advanced weapons, engineering. And the person who sent this to me had this interesting idea that it has something to do with the technology of these planes. Again, I'm not going there because I don't have the information enough, but that would be interesting if there is a connection, actually, not just in the spiritual realm, but in the physical realm as well. That's like really something. Now, this information was top-notch secret because it was under what we call classified information, but it was unclassified a few years ago, and to a certain degree, and you could do some research on it, and if I have it, I'll maybe share it next class. I heard about this years ago, but someone sent it to me again now, and I started looking at it, but I didn't. He sent it in Hebrew, so I didn't have the especially when you talk about modern, war terms and these things like that in Hebrew. I don't. It's not like reading Talmud. It's like you have to really be able to understand modern Hebrew to understand it. So I have to put it into translate and to really understand what it's saying. But in any case, that's it. So 7. How many bombs were dropped? Bunker buster bombs. Again, that took out 14. What's 14? Who is in charge over fighting the battles for the Jewish people? Who's the one in charge? Who is our defender? Who's the human person now? It's King David. King David is the ultimate warrior of the Jewish people. He is the one who fights the battles of God, and he was appointed the king. He fights the Goliaths. He fights the enemies of God. He couldn't even build the temple because his hands were bloody. He went out to war. Dovid, King David, is the 14th generation since the beginning of Judaism. The Zohar connects King David with the full moon. The Jewish people are compared to the moon. Abraham, the first Jew, is the first sliver of light of the first day. Isaac is the second day when the moon is a tiny bit larger. Jacob is a little bit larger. Moses, you have already seven is the 7th generation. It's already pretty bright. You can according to halacha say Kiddush Levana. You can already say according to halacha you can say after 3, but the Mekubalim, those who follow Kabbalah, wait till 7 days till you say Kiddush Levana. Because after Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, there's enough light in the world already. We have 3 of them. But if you really want, you wait till Moshe, which is the 7th. But a full moon, you need to wait till the Full moon is between the 14th and the 15th. So David is the 14th generation, and that's when he finishes all the wars, he defeats all the enemies of God. Because God's light is established. He establishes Jerusalem, which is going to be the eternal capital of God in this world. And he prepares the place for the building of the temple. His son, King Solomon, who's the 15th, builds the temple. Full moon. So I spoke about this many times. David, the word David in Hebrew, Dalet Vav Dalet, is numeric value of 14. So 14 is the power of King David. Dovid. Well, the moon declines. The Zohar says the moon declines. After King Solomon started a series of 15 kings, 14 kings, until there was no more kingdom of King David in the world. The next, if you look in scripture, you'll see there were 14 kings. It said Kiyahu was the last, and after that, no more kings from the second temple doesn't have any more the kingdom of King David anymore. It's gone. The moon is hidden. But we know the Jewish people are compared to the moon. They're going to rise again, just like the moon comes back. So we're going to be renewed. And particularly Moshiach is the final full moon. So, I mentioned this in other classes. The Rebbe, first book the Lubavitcher Rebbe published, Hayom Yom, is by the instruction of his father-in-law. He was told to make a book with small little inspirational thoughts for every day. Hasidic thought to live with on that day. In the beginning of it, he makes a biography of the Chabad dynasty, Chabad Rebbes. The Rebbe begins, this is his first book, this is even before he's Rebbe. He's giving the Chabad Hasidim a gift, and he makes a short, very concise biography of each of the 6 Rebbes before him, and then later on, he allowed for the Hasidim to add a biography on the Rebbe himself, to be it as the 7th one. He's in there as well. And it goes through the years, what he did this year, what happened next year, and all the major breakthroughs that that the Rebbe's accomplished. He begins Shoshela Sayachas Veroishe Parakim Mitoldes Beis Rabbeinu. The chain of the Yachas, of the Yichus, of the family tree, Veroshi Parakim, and the main points of Mitoldes Beis Rabbeinu from the chronicles of the house, from the history of the Rebbe. He starts with, I would think you would start with the first Chabad Rebbe. Who's the first Rebbe? The Alter Rebbe, Shneur Zalman of Liadi. The Rebbe doesn't. Who does he start with? Hagoin Merana v'Rabbana Yehuda Loi Zatzal. Hamaral mi Prague. The Rebbe puts into there that the first one really of the lineage of Chabad, you should trace it to the Maharal. Why the Maharal? I'm sure the Maharal's grandfather was also great. No, not the Maharal's grandfather. Not the great-great-great-father. No. We start from the Maharal. We'll see in a minute. Migeza Hagi, and the Rebbe says, why are we what's so important to trace the Chabad lineage up to the Maharal of Prague? Again, this is the first line of the first book that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gives us. That's something to think about. This is a person who gave us so much Torah, so much endless Torah. The first line of the first book that he is publishing when he's still on the side in the shadow of his father-in-law. Young, quiet, on the sidelines. His first line is that the leader of Chabad, the ancestor, is the Maharal. As we said earlier, we mentioned him. Rabbi Yehuda Loi, he's a 16th century rabbi in the city of Prague. And the Rebbe says, and the Rebbe adds, you know why the Maharal is so important? Because everybody knows the Maharal is the direct line to King David. Migeza Haga'oinim, he's from the offshoot of the great genius rabbis, Hameyuchasim, who are directly lined up LeDavid ben Yishai, to King David, the son of Yishai. Okay, so you can understand. He wants the Maharal because the Maharal is known to have been a descendant of King David. Okay, so then say Maharal and then say the Alter Rebbe is a grandson. The Rebbe doesn't do that. You know what he does? He spells out all the children exactly how the Alter Rebbe comes from the Maharal. He says like this: the Maharal, Rabbi Yehuda had a son. His name was Rabbi Tzalel. Bitzalel had a son, Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel had a son, Rabbi Yehuda Leib. Rabbi Yehuda Leib has a son, Rabbi Moshe. Rabbi Moshe has a son, Shneir Zalman. This is not the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe's grandfather. Shneir Zalman has a son, Reb Baruch, and Reb Baruch has a son, the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe is the seventh over here, but really the eighth, because when you count the Maharal, Maharal has one, and then you go down, it's eight. The Alter Rebbe is the eighth. Then you continue. The Mittler Rebbe then is what? The ninth. The Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, is the 10th. The Rebbe Marash is the 11th. The Rebbe Rashab is the 12th. Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak, the Rebbe Rayatz, the previous Rebbe, is the 13th. And the Rebbe is the 14th. Dovid, 14th. So there is going to be a return. That's why I've always been saying this, that from the Maharal began the return of Malchus Beis David. Now, if you think that this is, in the book of Maharal, there is the Maharal himself printed this on himself. This is so crazy. There's a book of the Maharal called Nesivas Olam. In the Nesivas Olam, there is a chapter called Nesiv HaLashon. Talks about Lashon, about being careful with your tongue. Lashon Hara, not it. Nesiv HaLashon. And over there, he quotes a letter that one of his students wrote to him. They addressed the Maharal with crazy titles, the way they speak to him, because he was like such a great rabbi. But nothing less than they call him Moshiach Tzidkenu. That's how they refer. And the Maharal had it printed, even though he was himself printing his own book. He had it printed that his students referred to him as Moshiach Tzidkenu. The answer is, he knows. The Maharal is the beginning of this return of the Malchus Beis David. It's going to take 14 generations. 14 bunker buster bombs to annihilate the threat of the Jewish people. 14. 7 planes, 14 buster bombs, 75 weapons altogether. What's that? The Rebbe's father-in-law passed away in 1950. The Rebbe became Rebbe in 1951. The Rebbe, on a deep, hidden level, became Rebbe already in 1950. As soon as his father-in-law passed away, the Rebbe, even though he didn't officially accept it, there's a 1-year lull over there. From 1950 till 2025 is 75 years. It's now the 75th year. We're inside now the 75th year of the Rebbe's leadership. So that's what I thought the 75, because understand something. You think, oh, what does that do with the weapons? Very simple. It's all the goodness that the Rebbe brought to the world, all the mitzvot, all the inspiration, all the godliness. That's the weapons that are taking down the murderous intentions and the murderous, these toxic materials that were going to burn the Jewish people in a modern day Auschwitz. So it's these weapons that are taking them down. It's the 75 years, the 14, the power of 14, the power of number 7. This is it. And the war starts. And you say, oh, come on, far stretch, you're just making connections. What are you talking about? 5 minutes before Netanyahu goes on this mission, he's there together with, I spoke about this in last class, with Milei, the Argentinian president, who's a Chabad Chassid. He's a Gentile Chabad Chassid. Everybody knows that. Goes to the Rebbe to daven every time he comes to America, goes to the Rebbe, to the OL, and he davens over there. He prays over there, this Gentile. And he comes to Netanyahu a day before, and he brings him a picture, a painting of Netanyahu together with the Rebbe. And Netanyahu says, he gets all excited. You know what he told me then? That I'm going to have to fight against everybody. And then Netanyahu says he's a prophet. He tells him, and they both agree that the Rebbe is a prophet. And that's the one event that's like right before this whole war goes into action. Who's behind it all? And let's not forget, as I mentioned in the last class, President Trump, who is now the big president ruling the whole world, stood by the Rebbe's place in Queens and prayed. And from that day on is when the betting markets started showing Trump winning the election. Trump didn't go. There are a lot of holy places you can go to. This is all God taking. See, if you're not seeing these pieces all coming together, this is stunning. This is absolutely stunning. This is Moshiach in full light. So, this is exciting me. What else did I want to share? One last thought, and then we're going to leave you. You know, Trump takes the credit for this, but it's not Trump's credit. I mean, again, I thank him for what he did. The real credit obviously goes to Israel for this incredible, obviously for God. Hashem is the one who's doing all the miracles, and through his servant, we spoke about Moshiach, but the ones who executed deserve a big thank you. And the Jewish people who said Tehillim and all the mitzvot and all the love and all the tshuva that happened in the last year since October 7th, and the whole, this is what's really moving it all. This is what's driving it all. But in the actual takedown of Iran, Israel did 95%. America did a little piece. But the 5% piece that America did, Israel just could not do. We did not have those planes. We did not have those bunker buster bombs. We didn't have that. It's in America. I mean, spiritually you can say, because the Rebbe is not in Israel, the Rebbe is in America. So the real power, until Mashiach comes, it's in America. That just that occurred to me right now. That's why the boom. You can make all the thing, but the real boom has to come from the United States. But there's another explanation, which I want to share with you. And that is that we learn Jew and Gentile have plugged into two different places. The Jewish people and the Torah is all plugged into what's called the world of Tikkun. The world of Tikkun is a world governed by reason, by logic, it's governed by structure, by holy godly structure. But holy godly structure has certain limitations. It's a state of existence where holy godly energy is able to be presented in the right kind of packaging. And there is a good what we call synchronization between the lights and the vessels. And the vessels and the containers can hold the light. That's the Jewish people. Basically, we can hold our alcohol. Spiritually, meaning to say, we're able to take the spiritual energies that are in us, we're able to digest it. And that's through all the Talmudic study and all the Torah and all this that give us the vessels to be able to contain the light. But the light is a vesselable light. It's a limited light. The Gentiles in general, but particularly Edom and Esau, are plugged into a much higher energy. An energy of infinite lights. But the vessels cannot handle it. There were vessels too to that light, but those vessels shattered and they broke. And the pieces of that vessel this is a Kabbalistic idea that we spoke about many times. And the energies that are stuck to those vessels, to those shards, come down into this world and become powerful forces of darkness. But because the energy is so intense, you can't control it. So what happens to it? It becomes a brute monster like Esau, or it becomes the Roman Empire, or it becomes Genghis Khan, or it becomes a Hitler, or it becomes Stalin, or it becomes ruthless Osama bin Laden. It becomes these forces of people that have like this, their unbridled energy, commitment, and drive. But it's an evil. It's in a messed up place. The job of the Jewish people is to slowly, delicately do surgery and work their way through the exile, through the lands of the nations, and help rectify these energies, and allowing these to rectify the broken shards through mitzvot. I'm not going to get into how this is done. Related to the collecting of sparks that we spoke earlier. When we finally finish the job and Moshiach is ready to come, the Geulah, the redemption, comes about. The Rebbe spoke about this many times. Through the enormous lights of Tohu, the powerful energies of Tohu, that are directed and flow through the channels and the direction of Tikkun. In other words, it's the people of Tikkun that give guidance to the people of Tohu and direct their powerful, they have the energy, but direct their powerful energies in a constructive manner. So the massive bunker buster explosions, atomic energy, powerful, big munitions, big planes that are like can carry this. All this belongs to Esau. But the direction of where it belongs, the right setting from it, belongs to Jacob, to Yaakov. So Israel this time, see, in history, these powers were unchecked. They were used for terrible things. Because we're holding at the time of Mashiach, we find the fusion now. Israel was the one who directed everything, created the whole vessel. But the energy, the final punch, they can't do it. For that, you need the powerful force of Tohu. You need those four guys walking down, Trump and Vance and Hexeth. Those four guys, they have that energy. But they must deliver that energy in the precise direction where Israel directs it, to eliminate and obliterate evil from the world through this powerful forces. Weapons are not going to be used anymore. We needed these weapons just for now. Very soon we're going to take all these weapons and just dismantle them. It was needed. All the technology, all the weapons in the world was to reach such high-grade weapons for this purpose. But the Jew had to be the one waving the flag, directing the non-Jew, who, as we discussed many times, very much like the incarnation of Esau, to come and join. And that's why I feel stunningly, when Trump gave his speech right after Saturday night, when he gave his speech about the action, what happened, he thanked everybody. When he said, "I love you, God." But there's something else that he said. He said, and I want to thank the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu. We worked, what was his word? We worked so close together as a team. I forgot the words he used. Probably like no other team ever worked before. Those were his words. I don't know if it was team or like we worked, like no one ever worked together. That's Moshiach. That's it. That's it. That's Moshiach. Trump, the power of Tohu, the power of chaos, the power of the Jewish power of Tikkun, merged together, fused together to do good for the world, to be the moral compass for the world, to direct the world in the right way. And this is what we just saw. So there's so much to celebrate. There's so much to sing. There's so much to dance. It's incredible. The 75, we mentioned this year, just going to go back to a class that I've given. The 75 years of the Rebbe is very, very important because when Abraham went out of Haran and Lech lecha ma'artzcha, go to your land, he was 75 years old, and we learned a midrash that God said to him, just like you are 75 years old, I promise you, and you left to the land of Israel, I'm going to appoint a redeemer from your children who's 75. And that, the Midrash says it's Esther who defeated the Persians round one. And I'm saying now it's also Moshiach's kingship, years of leadership, 75, which is the time right now. So from all angles, this is all. And if you think, if you want to know if you can trust what I'm saying is real, I would suggest listen to all the classes this year where I pretty much, not me, I have nothing to do with this. This is like kind of just where I from the beginning of the year, I said this year would be the year of the great circumcision, where all evil is going to be eliminated from the world, because it's the 5 times Tov. We spoke about it. And just a month and a half ago, I said this 71 days that I spoke about in the last class is going to be the time when you're going to see the separation from good and evil. It's going to separate. And here it is. Now, I'm not saying this because I'm saying it. I'm telling you because this is unfolding. This is so clear that it's unfolding. So I think we're at the time where I conclude my shiurim every single time, especially these type of classes, with something that we all should get comfortable, because the next big song, as I said in the last class, that the whole world will sing, is Yechi Adonenu, Ma'irenu, V'Rabbeinu, Melech HaMashiach Le'olam V'ad. Chaim.